challenge is even greater because we've got about 20 minutes to do so rather than the original 45. But actually, I think that the themes that have come out from all the presentations we've heard are very similar. There is a real focus on three pillars, if you like. There's the regulatory aspect, which appeals to me as a lawyer. There's the people aspect, which is about collaboration and bringing your stakeholders together. But there's also the technological and digital aspect. So I'm going to kick off my questions to Captain Saif, if I may, since he's been quiet for a while. In your presentation, you talked to us about how important sustainability is for Abu Dhabi ports. You have a number of digital tools that you have embraced. How are you practically embracing that in day-to-day operations at Abu Dhabi ports?
Thank you, Rania. So we have our emission is around in 2023 was 1.1 million tons of CO2 equivalent, plus 1.1 million from the ships that are visiting our ports. So you can see the amount is high. So therefore, we worked with leading ESG technology providers. So we have a platform that's called Maritime Emission Platform, which measures the emissions intensity within the port's jurisdiction areas. And that's not just capturing the data of the GHG emission, as well as capturing the locations of these intensities. And having these informations are crucial for us to have our plans focused on certain areas, especially that over 90% of the emissions are from our shipping arm and the shipping industry. Therefore, what can we provide for this sector in terms of what port can provide in terms of cord ironing, as well as other supports in terms of other alternative fuels that we can also provide. So technology is super important for us in our decarbonization journey.
Thank you. And a message that has certainly come through is the importance of technology, but also the importance of people. So, Mr. Omar, I'd like to ask you about your people initiatives within Etihad Rail and the engagement of employees in order to achieve what is clearly an important goal for you, which is sustainability. A lot has been said about maritime. Rail starts off 40 love as against maritime, but engaging your people must be an important part in your organizational structure and behaviors. How do you do that at Etihad Rail?
So mainly we believe people has to understand, it has to be embedded in their culture, no matter what policies you would put in, no matter what direction you would give people. If it's not embedded on those people as a culture, or they're convinced of what they're doing. They might do it because they've been asked, but it's different when it's embedded with them. Us, we do have an ESG team which actually reports all that. We have which dedicated to look into those ESG and the SDGs goals and everything. As well as we brought in from each, as I mentioned in the presentation, we brought in from each department as a champion, as a sustainability champion, bringing in, linking the dots, because we believe each department works in, someone has to come in and put all the sustainability factor together in a meeting or coming up together as a committee, looking into those points, connecting. Each one will drop off what he's doing as sustainability from each department, then it comes to a management to be able to understand what's going on all over the place. Those kind of stuff, as well as those our young employees and everyone. I was part of them, not the young, part of the employees who actually volunteered on those climate risk and bringing up Clean the UAE. We enhance this. Our people takes time from their weekends to do it. They started loving going to those places, and we're happy that we're having this, and we're continuing to building it in our Etihad Rail DNA.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how you can get engagement, and then engagement gets engagement, and it sort of builds up on itself. And going from a positive, I'd like to ask Mr. Rocha to talk to us a lot about digitalization and trade, and showed us that great video where we were reminded how trade impacts everything around us. What about the challenges in digitalization? What challenges do you see, and how do you suggest we all overcome them?
Well, I think the challenge is not really technological. It's, as you said, aligning stakeholders and getting the buy-in of people, articulating value, having the right direction and structure for the projects, digitalization projects to succeed. So a program of the size of, for example, the single window project we had, required all of that to be in place for it to succeed. So, alhamdulillah, from the beginning, we put the right structure, we got the mandate, the leadership support, then we had the right level of involvement for all the key stakeholders, and then we continue to articulate the value that is being produced by having this platform. So I think it's managing your stakeholders, putting the right structure, and articulating value. That's what's the most important thing.
Thank you. That's managing stakeholders is a point that Danny also touched upon. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you do that practically, and how you engage your stakeholders in your business?
As a matter of fact, it's something we have to do. Continue with Mr. Amar to have it embedded in our behavior. So it's in a daily basis. I mean, in my presentation, I have come to the cooperation we're having with Etihad Rail in terms of launching this shuttle, but the other way around. Mr. Omer's point in his presentation that, of course, the rail trucks are not getting to the sites, but we are cooperating with them to put our resources on their behalf to develop the rail. I mean, as much as we must keep the business continuity in case of any, let's say, infrastructure problem of solar. I have been putting also an example with Storm Geo. For us, being sustainable is making our operation much more efficient. And being our operation much more efficient is getting our customers much more happy in terms of profitability, in terms of costing itself. So that misconception that everything is more expensive because of being sustainable, we have to start thinking another way. So the engagement of all the stakeholders in the same, let's say, in the same way will help to change this mentality, if I may.
Yeah, I like that idea that we shouldn't just think about it as a cost. And maybe if I can turn to Dr. Abdallah. This morning, Dr. Ibrahim from Asyad said that one of the major challenges is who's going to pay for it, and the challenges to investment. The Sohar ports are clearly committed to make those investments in their sustainability goals. Can you tell us a little bit about Sohar port's commitment in that regard?
Yeah, thank you, Ania. So indeed, investments is one of the obviously big drivers for sustainability, big enablers for sustainability. And in Sohar Port and Free Zone, we've started to really consolidate the opportunities on the demand side management, so that we invite the super ESCOs. They come and explore the opportunity within the operations of the port, but also on the Free Zone. And then we've seen that those super ESCOs that become so much interested on the opportunities, and the numbers are really ticking. So they could already, we're already seeing savings of 30% or so on the demand side. So with that, that's already something up and running and a working model. The second thing that we're also exploring is the repurposing of some of the infrastructure that we have, infrastructure and assets, from being traditionally used for oil or for gas, and then if we can switch some of the infrastructures for new energies. Obviously, those infrastructure is already in place. Maybe it requires a bit of modification, but then that's something that appetites the investors, the private equities, to tap into and use some of the existing already systems in place. The third one is that we are exploiting opportunities that are in business elsewhere. For example, the macroalgae, it's already up and running. It's a running business elsewhere. and there's a big potential in Oman to do it. So that is something that we're not facing so much of a hesitation, I would say, from the investors. But internally, we're also having a sustainability fund wherein we evaluate opportunities for anything that we see feasible for pilots, demonstrators. And one example for this is hydrogen. Obviously, hydrogen is a big topic, especially green hydrogen, that is so much on the headlines everywhere. But then we are trying to break in that virtuous cycle with those pilots and demonstrators, and then we break in that wait and see. And then if there's any gap that we see, obviously, that needs to be covered, we are discussing and we're exploring ways also with the government to try to cover that gap, and then move on with the projects and upscales. So the third part, so I spoke that the first bucket is that some of the businesses are already up and running, so investments is already flowing. The second bucket is opportunities that requires a bit of internal funding, and for that we have an internal sustainability fund. And the third one is we are really embarking on partnerships, and for that in Sohar Port and Free Zone we established what we call SINZA, Sohar Net Zero Alliance, which is made of the key tenants in the port and the free zone, and wherein we have that open dialogue of what are the challenges that are faced across the board and what are the priorities in all of them. So things are progressing, things are shaping up, and ultimately one of the objectives of this SINZA is to pull in the investments required to build the common use infrastructure or utilities. So those are the three areas that we're working on. As I said, things are progressing, at least in the first two buckets, and things are shaping up in the third one.
Alhamdulillah. I think you've touched upon the importance of collaboration and transparency and communication. If I can ask Captain Saif, collaboration is one of the pillars for the Abu Dhabi Maritime, and as far as I can see, it's very open in its communication. Why was collaboration chosen as one of your pillars for Abu Dhabi Maritime?
Because we noticed that there are some areas where need to be enhanced, especially in communication. So between the private sector and the public sector, as AD Maritime, which is under AD Port Group, with collaboration with the Department of Municipalities and Transport in Abu Dhabi. So we are basically delegated to be the regulator in the maritime sector in Abu Dhabi. And so the whole industry in the maritime industry in Abu Dhabi, from the private sectors, other public sectors, are our stakeholders. So ensuring that there is a close communication with them are crucial. So therefore, one of our initiatives, which will be celebrating its first anniversary, is the Maritime Hub Abu Dhabi. The Maritime Hub Abu Dhabi has a lot of other initiatives. It is based on a benchmark we have done with the top leading maritime cities in the world. So we noticed that certain cities has this initiative, which is creating a cluster, a foundation, a hub. So we chose to call it AD Maritime Hub. So basically connecting the private and the public sectors. And one of the first initiatives within the hub that we established the working groups. So these working groups, basically all industries, shipbuilders, oil and gas service providers, classifications, trainings, others. So we have around 7 working groups, where they meet. They tell us their challenges, their recommendations, their requirements, and then we connect them to the required government entities and see and provide their needs or address their challenges.
It's the continuation of that theme of the requirement for collaboration and open communication and transparency in order to achieve sustainability and to achieve our goals. I'm going to turn to Captain Sevraj and ask him a very practical and open question, which is, how does a service provider, I often ask myself this as a law firm, how does a service provider contribute to the sustainability goals in our industry?
Well, that was not the question I was prepared for, but let me think through.
Surprise.
As a service see, we have business partners. Our business model is how can we make our members trade with confidence? To enable them to trade with confidence, what is required? So we basically, as I said in my presentation, we are not policing, we are facilitators. So we collect information from different sources, from the experts in the industry. There are certain members of ours who are leaders, who are ready to invest. For example, if they've got ships under construction with methanol fuel or ammonia fuel, we start working with them and giving them all the possible help, or we grow with them so that they can, like the training of crew, as Dr. Ibrahimi mentioned, is so important. So if we start that from the time the ship is under construction, it will deliver much better results. So that's just one of the examples. It's like loss prevention 10, 15 years back. It is not a cost. It is an investment which is going to give positive results. So it's working in collaboration with them, what their requirements are. If somebody is going into nuclear fuel or something else he wants, so we say, okay, here is somebody we know. Why don't you, we facilitate that sort of information. Does it help?
Yeah, it does help, and it goes back again to that sharing of information. And sometimes you need to sit slightly outside the entities that are doing and are responsible for delivering. And I guess that's a question for you, Navin. I mean, you get to see how companies operate. What would be your top advice to a company that wants to develop, sustainability goals? You've touched upon technology being very important. What would be your main bit of advice?
I think there are 3 key points to it. The first would be to identify technologies that are already proven, that is being used by the industry, because those are the low-hanging fruits. You don't have to worry about whether this will work or not work. They are proven technologies being used by others or early movers. So, get it into your plans to adopt those technologies. The next step would be to engage with industry leaders, and that means technology providers, and figure out what aligns with your strategic goals, because not every technology is for everyone. And therefore it is very important to pinpoint what is your go-to technology, and then obviously in your strategic plan allocate budgets, invest in those technologies, collaborate, develop solutions, and implement it. So that is, I think, is the best way to move forward.
That's very practical advice. And Theo, don't think I forgot about you just because you're sitting right here. I'm going to really ask you to comment on the role of regulations as well. Everybody has commented on the existence of regulations. We've talked about some of the barriers to achieving sustainability goals. The regulations are supposed to exist to make us do it anyway. Do you think it's a carrot and stick approach? Which is better, the carrot or the stick? Is it a win-win situation for all the stakeholders in the business? Do you think regulation is the way to drive sustainability, or do we go back to collaboration and engagement of stakeholders?
I think a little bit of both, if you want my opinion. I mean, I think the idea of like 2050 and the zero carbon or zero emissions, like it's in the minds of people in the community and the society is done. So I guess now we have to find a way how we're going to regulate this and how it's going to happen. I mean, like we said on both panels, there are different ways. I don't think there will be only one solution fit for all. I mean, it's going to be impossible. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's based on what we know today. I think probably we'll have to work on a multiple solutions. So the job of the work and the function of the regulators is to make sure that if we have 5 solutions going forward, either this is ammonia or and methanol and carbon capture or anything else, there will be the proper regulatory environment and international proper regulatory environment for all these different options. Because the last thing we want, and we've seen this happening in the past on other sectors, is a different regulation in Europe, different regulation in the US or in another country, and that will be a complex, and the ship owners and the industry will not be able to deal with this. So we have an obligation, a duty, all the flag states, at least in the IMO, to make sure we have the proper regulatory environment. We have to make sure that we are efficient when we regulate, and we, like I said on my presentation, we hear what the industry wants and how, what are the problems and the obstacles they're going to face. In no way we want to have a trade disruption. That would be a major problem for the industry. So whatever we decide is the best option or best options, we need to make sure that we have the expertise, the people, the information, the feedback sharing, like you said, collaboration with different industry parties like glass societies, shipyards, designers, of course ship owners, which they have the final say, and make sure whatever we approve on moving forward is going to be effective, cost effective as well, and sustainable too.
Yeah, and you've made the point about the importance of listening as well.
It is important. I mean, we keep listening to our people. I mean, it's difficult because there are too many different opinions out there. But again, we have an obligation to sit down with the industry and listen to what they want. And then when we regulate, we probably find the best solution for all.
Well, that's a very good way for me to ask whether the industry that is sitting in this room has any questions for us, and whether anyone would like to ask this esteemed panel questions, or whether you are in need of your coffee fix. Clearly in need of the coffee fix, which is understandable. That just leaves me to thank our esteemed panel for their time and their expertise, and for sharing their insights with us all today. I've certainly found it very helpful, and thank you again.